Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Question Box episode 15 for Friday, the 29th of October, 2021. The Question Box is your weekly video game talk show where we dive into the most important news topics from the industry that we love. I'm your host, Shane Bailey, and each week I'm joined usually by one good friend from the Australian New Zealand games community. But today I have the distinct pleasure of being joined by both hosts from the number one achievement hunting podcast in the Southern Hemisphere. Please welcome Matt Jonsson and Cameron Hyland from the Hall of Gamers podcast. Boys, how are we?
Oh, doing very well. I mean, there was a lot of qualifiers on that.
Oh, sorry. I'll get rid of Southern Hemisphere. Get rid of the achievement. Just the number one podcast.
Just podcast. Yeah, it's yeah, exactly. Just number one. We're just number one. There's two of us, but we're still just number one. That's fine.
Nice. Well, before we dive into the rigmarole of the show, I'd love for it for you guys, for anyone who has been living under a rock and hasn't heard of the Hall of Gamers podcast. What is it all about? Introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about yourselves. Matt, I might start with you.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Matt Jonsson, Neo Master on my handle, as they used to say back in the day. Basically, Hall of Gamers is a podcast where we talk about achievement hunting, usually on the Xbox side of things. We're a niche of a niche. We play games incorrectly, but we play the hell out of them. And the whole thing is that we tend to take that bit of a slant. And obviously, we've got an interest in the general video game industry as a whole because we got into video games because we love them, but we've also got obsessed with this part of video games that we just love to just drill deep down into and understand the psychology of why people play video games. And what drives us to play games and what makes a good game versus a bad game, and and having a list of achievements and having a list of goals can change that for some people and not for others, and what's important about that. And then usually dick and fart jokes and just other terrible stuff that just gets filtered into it, unfortunately, because we're uncultured
degenerates.
Yeah, uncultured degenerates. Yeah, which also it's an
You're really selling the show, Matt. Like it's
great. Yeah, I mean, look, it's a fantastic time, and we love doing it. But it's mostly about us. I mean, it's mostly about me, to be honest, because I usually get on my soapbox. And we usually put Cameron down a little bit.
All right, cool. So if there's one thing achievement hunters are egotistical,
yes,
and Matt is a perfect representation of that.
100%. I mean, mainly because
it's putting a number against your ego, right? It's just like, here is mine. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Literally, it's literally a way of getting it out and putting it on the desk and measuring them up. I've got nearly 1.8 million gamers score. Yeah, nearly 1.8 million gamer score. And I'm the number one. I have the highest gamer score in both Australia and New Zealand for now. I do have some challenges in Australia.
Who's closest? Who's nipping at your heels?
So we've got a good buddy of our show, Mephisto. He was. So I was sitting at about 1.7 million, and he was about 60 or 70,000 away. And it was getting to that stage where I'm like, I've been doing this for a long time, and I thought, I'm going to kind of step away from it. Maybe just let him take these. I'll keep New Zealand as number one here, but Australia, they can fight it over there. But then he made the mistake of officially challenging me and saying, "Oh well, no, I think actually no, we're gonna do this in front of everyone, and everyone's gonna watch this." And I said, "Oh well, if that's gonna be the case, unfortunately, I'm gonna need to put another 150,000 points between us in the next 3 weeks." So I'm still pretty comfortably sitting in that spot. I'm ranked somewhere in the top 50 for the world. It fluctuates a little bit because it's still a very competitive industry. I mean, I'm a big fish in a small pond. But Cameron's 100% right. We're all egotistical maniacs, and we do it for our own self-aggrandizement and enjoyment. It's the same reason we do the podcast, just because we can talk more about ourselves.
Maybe not to the point where you won't actually add anybody above your score.
I mean, look,
until you've overtaken them.
I mean, yeah, if someone overtakes me, obviously I don't want to see their name above mine on my friends list, so they just get wiped out. But thankfully, there's only like 40 people in the entire world who can do that, and most of them I wouldn't talk to even if I saw them.
Right. Cameron, where are you? Over the million mark? What's going on there?
No, because I actually like to experience games.
Right.
And experience every kind of game. To Matt's dismay.
Yes, I'm a completionist. I will play a game till I complete it and rinse everything out of it. Cameron's like, no, I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna do the buffet method of just putting a little bit of everything on my plate, which drives me insane.
Right.
So,
Well, if I can help one of you out and transfer my 71,000, my paltry 71,000 gamer score, then let me know.
71,000 still isn't anything to be scoffed at.
Well, for 16 years of Xbox gaming, it might be so.
I mean, you probably could have put a little more work into it, mate.
Yeah,
but,
true.
Hey, we won't hold it
I'm
against
a
you.
fraud. I'm a fraud. Anyway. Awesome. Well, I want to dive into achievements, but that's going to be the main topic of the show, so we'll save that till the very end. Firstly, thanks to Charmander in chat for joining us. She said that the podcast is about family. It's like the Fast and Furious franchise. And thanks to the Big Billy Bob for the follow earlier as well. Great to see you here. Hope you enjoyed the show. For those tuning into the first time, this is the Question Box every Friday, usually 8:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. We jump on to, again, talk about the most important gaming news topics. We started a bit later this week because I was very fortunate to join the boys for their podcast, Hall of Gamers, which you can check out, Hall of Gamers Pod, both Twitter and Twitch. It's the same handle for both, correct? Correct. Awesome. So go check that out there on all the services, Spotify, right?
Yeah, you can't miss us.
Awesome.
We're YouTube, Spotify, Patreon.
Everything but Pandora. Pandora can go suck one.
Poor Pandora.
It's just too hard to set up.
Awesome. Well, I think I can copy and paste the URLs. Oh, there we go. It worked flawlessly. There you go. Follow the guys on Twitter and Hall of Gamers as well. Alrighty, gents. Well, shall we get into the top 3 news stories for the week?
Let's do it.
Awesome. We're going to kick off with something very close to, I think, all of our hearts, and that is the topic of Xbox. They have had a really solid last couple of weeks. Just recently, they revealed the first campaign gameplay for Halo Infinite, the first that we've seen since the now notorious July 2020 demo featuring the one and only Craig. This was 343... needing to redeem themselves, really, for what many believe to be a lackluster showing last year. Obviously, the reception to the multiplayer tech previews that have happened recently have been all but stellar. And the remaining question mark really was on the campaign. I'm going to throw it up on so everyone can watch it while we talk about it, gents. But I'm keen to understand, Matt, I might go to you first. Firstly, your history with Halo, like, is it one of those franchises you go to? And also, what did you think of this recent campaign overview?
Yeah, so in terms of my history with Halo, Halo CE was the thing that got me into the Xbox. I didn't originally own one. I had, it was the classic story of I had a mate, one of my neighbors had the Xbox, and he was like, "Oh, hey, come over and play this game." And it just kind of like, I used to have a GameCube and a PlayStation 2 and wasn't really on the Xbox side of things. And then Halo CE just kind of blew my mind. I kind of was like, I was kind of off and on with like Halo 2 and I enjoyed it a little bit, but Halo 3 that's when I got into achievement hunting. That was kind of the 360. That was kind of, 2007 was when I jumped on and got really, really serious about video gaming. So Halo 3 co-op, the launch day co-op, 4 people, driving a Scorpion tank, fighting off 2 Scarabs, like those amazing moments. And like, I went back and did it recently and it was like, this game is still incredible. So I played pretty much all the Halos. I didn't do Master Chief Collection because, first of all, the achievement list is a nightmare. It also had a bit of a rough launch, and also I'd played all those games before, so I didn't really feel the need. But everything else, I've done Halo Wars, I've done Reach, I've done 4-5, I've done Spartan Assault. I'm a big Halo fan. I'm more there for the campaign than say the multiplayer stuff. I'm not a play well with others person, as you probably could tell. But so yeah, and Cameron and I were talking about this on Hall of Gamers, where we're like, it seems a bit weird that we've had all this multiplayer stuff and this campaign stuff was just kind of strangely absent. And then of course, the minute we said that, there was hey, it's a premiere, we're going to show off this thing. So yeah, we were very, very excited. I think it was a fantastic showing. I think it was. I mean, obviously it was head and shoulders above the stuff they showed last time. Having said that, the stuff they showed last time, I was perfectly fine with. Again, it wasn't mind blowing. I wasn't expecting Bungie level skyboxes and revolutionary stuff. I was expecting another good Halo game that I was going to enjoy. This looks like it's going to be more in that direction of like, actually, we really want to do something special and interesting, and I'm curious to see how the changes impact the overall feel of Halo, but I'm cautiously optimistic, we'll say.
Nice. Cameron, what about you? Yeah, how do you feel about this the latest overview?
The last 2 minutes, I've just been sitting in my head, cautiously optimistic the whole time, sitting in my head, and you go and steal it. Pretty much the exact same feeling. I looked at the campaign trailer, and the one thing I'm worried about is whether it's gonna maintain that feel. Like, I just want this to play like a Halo game. I finished our Halo MCC this year just to get it done before Halo Infinite. In terms of like, I didn't touch the multiplayer previews just because I know that I was basically going to let everybody else experience first thing and then get the thoughts and feelings. I knew it was going to play it anyway. This, I'm kind of on the fence about, mainly because I won't have co-op campaign at launch. And to me, Halo is all about those co-op experiences. Halo 3 was the very first game I played on the Xbox 360. I enjoyed immensely, but without that, I lived on a farm growing up. I had dial-up connection. I didn't have the option to play co-op with people. As soon as I got off the farm with an ADSL connection and actually played with people online, I've never looked back since. Gaming to me is very social, and unless there's an achievement that dictates me playing solo, I don't like it.
Fair enough. Yeah. Did you, speaking of like the feel of the game, did you dive into the tech preview at all just to get a feel for the weapons and how that played?
No, I'm purely just, I want to wait till day one. I want to wait to launch and experience it, because then I'm basically going to get blue-balled. I'm going to play it for a weekend, really enjoy it, go, what am I meant to do? Because I like to just, I'm the type of gamer that will play one game for like weeks on end. I will try and drain every last thing out of that game and then move on.
Yep.
Or if I don't enjoy it, I'll play it for 20 minutes and then I'll just move on, much to Matt's dismay. But
yes, I just, it doesn't matter whether the game's good or not. I'm going to play the hell out of it, whether I like it or not.
Suffer through it.
Oh, absolutely. Part of it, and we'll talk about achievement hunting being a form of masochism in the topic, but that's 100% what it is. Yes, I'm totally with Cameron on the co-op thing as well. I think that's like, this is the kind of thing that Cameron and I would play together, almost certainly. You know, like we've done a lot of co-op experiences, just even outside of doing the show, just because we're good mates. And like it's Halo was one of those tentpole games of being like, okay, you know, we did we did Strange Brigade together. We did Remnant from the Ashes together, and just like, you know, kind of those fun co-op experiences. And this was kind of going to be the next one to get us back together to do this stuff. And it looks like we might be waiting a little while.
And this will be the kind of game too where you can use all the new things like the grapple hook, do a cool kill, and it's not going to be the exact same effect as, oh, here's this clip I'm showing my mate now, rather than actually being in the world itself. Like, I want to see those awesome kills that my mates are doing while playing alongside them, not like an hour later because they've decided to clip and put it on YouTube.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you on understanding that feeling of sort of the blue balls, because when at that first tech preview I played, and no word of a lie, that following week after it ended, I didn't want to play anything else. Nothing was going to satiate me, no matter how good it was. That I don't think I played anything that week, actually. I was very, very depressed. But I will say, like, coming away from both tech previews, having sunk, I think, close to 20 hours into it combined, the weapon feels, like, at least for me, like just very, very Halo. Like every weapon feels distinct. The audio design is fantastic. All the animations are great. I think the only criticism I have would be against the plasma pistol. There's just something about its visual and audio design that isn't quite sitting right for me. But I think I think a lot of people have actually expressed that, and hopefully 343 implements a couple of changes there. Totally hear you guys about the campaign as well. Like, I think that's a huge disappointment. Yeah, I think we're waiting till like season 1 or 2, whatever comes first, season 2.
I think season
3 months later.
3 months, yeah.
Co-op campaign first, and we'll get the Forge later on. Yeah.
So I think I mentioned on your show just earlier, like typically I will run Halo campaign solo by myself, heroic, experience the story in the campaign by myself, so I don't have friends yapping in my ear and distracting me, and then later we'll jump back in and play Legendary. But I totally understand your hesitancy, particularly around open world and like upgradable equipment, that sort of thing. Like a lot of what they showed this week really speaks to me in the sense that I love Halo for the freedom it gives the player, particularly in those amazing single player moments like you mentioned, Matt, with there's a scarab, There's like 5 different ways to take it down. You on the fly decide how you want to do it. There's no scripted moments. Like, this thing has got an AI and it's completely dynamic, and just use the sandbox at your disposal. The idea of having that and blowing the world wide open, so every instance of combat is like that, and you're afforded that freedom, is exciting to me. But at the same time, Halo 3 like is known for like fantastic, very like level design, right? Where like Bungie is able to funnel you in a way that you just can't do in an open world game. So yeah, I'm a tiny bit concerned about maybe it's like a careful what you wish for scenario in this instance.
It's essentially a linear open sandbox, isn't it?
Yeah.
All the previous,
Well, yeah,
which is such a weird term to think
Well,
of.
it's like it's a very wide linear game, right? Like it's
Yeah.
they give you enough freedom to make you think that you're not being funneled, but of course you are going through like linear level design.
Going through set pieces. I guess the thing is that like my worry is that it's going to turn into be a little bit too Far Cry. As much as I love like the Far Cry series and how that series has evolved and become a much big open world thing to kind of tackle things however you want, that's really lost the narrative like crafted experience. And like Far Cry was never really known for that, but Halo is in so many ways. I mean, Halo 2 did a little bit too much, turning it into one big corridor shooter, and Halo 3 kind of split the difference. And I'm hoping that they've opened it up just a little bit, but not too much, because I don't want to lose that feeling.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, yeah, with an open world game, like, is it going to be a lot more difficult to get that truth and reconciliation, land in the Pelican, sneak up on the cliffside in the dark to take down the turrets? Like, will you get those moments? Will you get the landing on the beach in the Silent Cartographer? These scripted moments that you might lose in an open world game. I'm hoping that like those sort of seemingly underground strongholds, as they called them, could be that. Like, there will be instances where you go into a stronghold and maybe the level design there sort of shapes the way you need to fight. So maybe hopefully we'll get a bit of both. But look, I'm really excited for it. I think like the visuals look a lot better. I think the enemy design looks fantastic as well. I love just like seeing like throwing back to like, I'm just looking at the footage right now where he just leaps off the cliff with the Marines and the Warthog. Like, that's like so like level 2 Halo kind of vibes, where you're deciding how like you want to save the 3 different groups of Marines. So I'm feeling really positive. But look, that's not the only positive Xbox news that happened this past week. Age of Empires 4 just released, and it's getting really strong reviews. Obviously, this is a game long in the making. It's been a long time since we've had an Age of Empires game. Cameron, we just got done on your show talking about how much you've been enjoying it. Did this come as a surprise to you at all? Like it's a series that's been dormant for so long, and now we have a new developer, Relic, coming in, and they've seemingly knocked it out of the park for the most part.
Not really. Like, I think it's in sorry, it's new enough in such a way that it takes a lot of the old aspects and just pushes them further to the max. Like, just playing through today, like, they've got masteries for certain civilizations. They've got Art of War included in, which is like timed kind of like economic boom or battle situations. The campaign, I started the Norman one today, which was pretty good. Played halfway through that. It seems like a much more polished game, but not as, and I'm not saying this is a bad way, not as faithful to, say, like Age of Empires 2. Like, this is a completely different way of, like, not a cookie cutter recipe. I think that's really paid off for it.
Yeah, it's always going to be a struggle with long-running franchises like that, right? Like, how much of the original do you need to retain without, hopefully making it feel like just a rehash, like you haven't evolved the formula enough, as opposed to how much do you change it but avoiding, I suppose, melding it into something that it's not, like changing it so much that almost it doesn't feel like an Age of Empires game. But no, good to see it. It's sitting at an 82 on Metacritic right now. I just I was really pleasantly surprised to see. Okay, like it's been recently we've seen like a lot of like great sort of reboots, or not even reboots, but even just great entries in long-running franchises. I'm thinking of Wasteland 3 last year doing really well from In Exile, and this happening as well. Matt, are you excited for Age? Will you jump into it eventually?
I mean, I'll give the honest answer. It'll depend on the achievement list.
I don't
But
think it's going to be that bad, but I think it's going to be a bit of a longer list.
I mean, that's
100G for watching all the documentaries about trebuchets.
yeah, sure. Hey, it's fine. I mean, like, hey, like, I won't shy away from a game if it's challenging. But it's always, always check for things like, oh, play 10,000 hours of a game. You're like, I don't know if I want to have that commitment, But like I loved like Age of Empires 1 was one of the first games I ever played. It was a real bonding moment that I had with my dad. My dad's not a gamer at all. I was the first sort of proper gamer of the family. But it was something that him and I bonded over in terms of like having an interest in history and like having it was like the first sort of PC game that I played. So I have a real nostalgia for the original and 2 as well. I didn't really like 3 all that much, which I think is kind of typical. I'm excited to see what they do with it. I'm more excited to hear what Cameron thinks about it once he's played more of it, because he's got a real passion for that stuff. And I love the idea of RTS, but I don't have the mental capacity to be able to do it. Basically, or do it well. My typical strategy is, okay, well, I'm going to play a Command and Conquer game. I'm going to choose Nod, and I'm probably going to just build as many laser towers as possible and then just fly helicopters over the enemy base and see if that works. And if it doesn't work, I'll try it again with more helicopters. So there's not really a lot of nuance to that. Whereas, like the Art of War stuff that Cameron's talking about around, okay, well, I need to think about what my build order is, what kind of production I'm doing, how I'm doing with scouting and all that kind of stuff. Like there's a lot going on with those
allocation.
Guns. Exactly, right? And like I enjoy that to an extent, but it quickly gets to a stage where it's more work than fun. And I already turn my video games into mostly work, so it's we'll see. I'm glad it's good. Like I'm really happy that it turned out well and people are happy with it. It's just a question of whether it's going to be for me or not. I haven't quite decided.
Yeah.
Growing up, sorry.
No, after you can.
Growing up, I wanted to be an archaeologist. So I feel like out of any, I realized soon after that it's probably not the easiest field to get into or the best paying, unless you actually find stuff, which isn't always the case.
A lot of people really dig it though.
God damn you. But I feel like Age of Empires 4 like does that history lesson element so well compared to any of the other. Like I love going through Age of Empires 2 and actually, sitting at the start, listening to the voice narration, and then doing the campaign and then listening to the voice narration of like what the result of that was, and then if I'm really invested, I'll go on Wikipedia or I'll look into the history of it just to study a bit more. But for just doing like, you should have 10 objectives in a match, going to each objective, getting a little bit of narration, a little bit of story onto that element of like the Battle of Hastings, that kind of stuff. It's just so engaging with history. And I kind of want them to do the exact same thing with Age of Empires 2 now.
Well, but, I imagine there's a lot of potential for them to bring a lot of the Age of Empires 2 stuff that they've done in the past into the modern age with this stuff, and say, hey, look, we're gonna add some more factions, and with that, we're gonna add a whole new story for this faction, or there's a lot of potential for DLC in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I think most Xbox first party games now tend to have a pretty long tail with seasonal updates and that sort of thing. So won't surprise me if we get a lot more for Age. I'm looking forward to it. I think I mentioned on your show as well that it's the kind of game that I'll just throw on a weekend and just like have a podcast on my second monitor while I boot up an exhibition match and just have fun dabbling. I don't necessarily like boost up the difficulty to to really challenge myself and like need to be worried about how many actions per minute I'm doing. Not that type of strategy gamer, but I just enjoyed the vibe and the wallows and just having some chill fun. Anyway, to wrap up this topic, I just want to bring in Forza Horizon 5 had a bunch of impressions come out that seems like a preview cycle before launch. As expected, really, really positive. I'm just going to link the one from Press Start from Brody Gibbons in the chat. He ended his piece with pretty positively, saying, if this small helping was any indication of what's going to be on offer from the final product, players will be eating well when Forza Horizon 5 drops next month. It's releasing November 5, of course, on Xbox and PC, and will be day one in Game Pass. Forza Horizon 4, huge success for Microsoft, more than 25 million players, constantly at the top of the Xbox Game Pass charts as well. Cam, on your show, we got done talking about how, this is likely to be a top contender for your Game of the Year, potentially alongside Guardians. What are we expecting from Forza Horizon 5 here? Do we think it can eclipse even what Forza Horizon 4 was going to achieve?
I think so. Like, this is a series I've spent over 2,000 hours in, and every iteration just keeps on getting better. I think it's just the whole open worldness vibe of it. Like, realistically, like any kind of possibility of like where to drive and just capturing that environment. And like even going as to like how they were taking the photos of the environment. I can't remember what the graphical infidelity.
It was
when
like
they were first
12K resolution of the sky or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing that I haven't really been fond of is seasons, because I always get to winter and I just kind of go like, maybe I'll just give this week a miss. I don't care for this. Yeah, I just don't care for the slippery environments. But that's just my own personal preference. I mean, everything that they've shown so far looks amazing. They announced that they're doing like some kind of legacy cars. So if you played any of the original Forza Horizons, or I think 5 onwards for Motorsport, you get a select car for each game, which is great because I'm covered for everything. But yeah, I would be very surprised if this isn't my Game of the Year.
Nice. What about you, Matt? What's your affinity with the franchise?
I did one, and I was like, okay, I'm good. Racing games are the bane of my existence. I'll say straight out. Like there are certain things where I'm just like, fighting games, racing games, and sports games. I'm just like, you know what? What? Not can't even. Again, racing games are another thing I enjoy the idea of. I'm like, man, cool, fast cars, doing cool things, boosting nitrous and skidding around corners and all that kind of stuff. I'm very much like a Need for Speed Underground. Like, I love that kind of stuff. But when it gets to the slightly more technical aspect, or actually having to be good at games, it falls down a little bit for me. And my biggest problem is it boils down to no matter what kind of paint you put on the car, you're still driving a box with 4 wheels from point A to point B, trying to do it slightly faster than you did last time. And that just doesn't really appeal to me. You can the set dressing is amazing. I love the environment. I can appreciate all the amazing stuff that they're doing with the cameras in Mexico and the music and the style, and like especially like looking at how 4 was fantastic, and 5 just looks like it's even better. And like all the crazy stuff they're doing and trying to bring in all these interesting elements and all the connectivity stuff they're doing, like as a piece of software and a service and a game and everything, it looks incredible, and I can't believe it's getting made. Like, it looks great, but it would bore me to tears. I would literally be narcoleptic. It would be dangerous for me to be behind the wheel. But that doesn't stop me from appreciating that it's going to be it'd probably be a lot of people's Game of the Year, I think.
Yeah, I think it's shaping up to be that way, right? Like, there definitely was criticism leveled at 4 because of its seasonal structure, like you mentioned, Cam. It's seemingly like they've taken that on board, and now instead of seasons, there's just different biomes, right? Like, you can experience different weather conditions on the map. You just drive to the one that you want to experience, which I think is a really great solution. And I was worried, before reveal, thinking how they're going to up the ante. I think Mexico seems like a great setting. The culture there and the music, I think, is going to be fantastic. They have a full campaign now, it appears, and it's got that cool, I'm forgetting the name of it, but that game mode customization sort of map maker sort of thing, where you can create all kinds of novel experiences, kind of like almost like a racing forge mode, if you will.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the thing that elevates it to like, holy cow, I can't believe there's so much content in this package. And I hope Playground get their due. Like, if it does turn out to be fantastic, I think Forza Horizon 4 was snubbed for Game of the Year. To be fair, a lot of fantastic games came out that year, including God of War and some other big hitters like Red Dead. So it had some tough competition. But I kind of want to take this conversation and pivot now. We just discussed Halo, Age, Forza, all looking really, really strong, or performing really strong and doing really really well. What are our thoughts right now on Xbox first party? Obviously, historically, they've been criticized for like low quality output, particularly around 2017, 2018, before they picked up their game and grabbed a lot of studios under their belt. Cam, I might go to you first. Like, we've got these 3 games that are either just come out or about to come out. Psychonauts 2 was early this year. We've seen Flight Sim and Ori last year as well. Like, how are you overall feeling about Xbox first party at this point?
To me, 2021 was like paying respect to every franchise, specifically for me, that felt Microsoft. Like Age of Empires, Psychonauts. Psychonauts going to be the odd exception out of here, sorry. But like every major release we've seen this year kind of just feels nostalgic to me. Like I never got into Flight Sim, but Flight Sim has been around for forever.
Well, it's their longest running game franchise, yeah.
Forza Horizon, I got into, played it pretty much for the whole entire Xbox One generation. Halo 3 was the very first game I got. I'm loving Halo Infinite, and even their older franchises, like just still supporting Halo MCC to like, I think it's season 8 now.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And bringing like Halo 3 Flood and all that kind of stuff. Sorry, Halo 3 Firefight Flood in is just amazing to me. I feel like this is kind of a year of like last hurrah to all the classic, well-recognized properties by Microsoft before we start getting into all the new IP that they showed off last year, and everything that Bethesda's got on the table, as well as everybody else that they acquired. Like even just Playground Games is my favorite publisher, and I'm so keen to see what they do with Fable.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think they know what they're doing, right? Like they're traditionally a racing game studio, but they've been making some really exciting hires for that second team. And I think they're obviously really uniquely positioned to deliver a great Fable experience, being a British studio as well. But you make a great point just on, like, I didn't realize kind of the releases this year kind of really lean into Microsoft and Xbox's heritage really well. With Psychonauts, which was originally an OG Xbox exclusive, so not published by them, but that was certainly the case. And then Forza obviously, and Halo long running, Age even more so. So yeah.
It kind of makes me think at the same time, how long ago was this planned? Like, was this purely just 20th anniversary, or is it all just coincidental?
I think considering Halo was delayed a year, I think a lot of it's going to be coincidental.
Yeah.
But
just how that's lined up too
is
still pretty incredible to think about. And I mean, like when Fable and Perfect Dark come out, that's going to be still paying respect to the heritage as well.
Definitely.
But then just with some amazing new IPs, like I'm really keen to see Redfall.
Yeah, for sure. Matt, I might go to you next. Like, another thing that I've noted as well from Xbox first party, particularly this year, is just a lot of their games as service games doing really well. State of Decay 2 hit 10 million players recently. Sea of Thieves got the awesome Pirates Life expansion as well, and that's over 25 million players now. But yeah, just generally, how are you feeling about Xbox first party at this point?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I look at it from the two perspectives, right? Because as a personal person, there's not a lot on the Microsoft card that actually interests me in terms of the way I play games, right? Like Halo Infinite I'm interested in, but Forza's a no-go for me. I don't really do games with the service because I don't have the time or the interest. Not to say that any of those things are bad or anything like that, right? This is just how I play video games. So I'm a lot more interested. I've been a lot more indie focused recently in terms of like the Game Pass offering. The Game Pass is where I've been focused on with Microsoft. So something that I did... being an achievement hunter, I've played way too many games, right? And I bought too many. And I got to the stage where I said, actually, you know what? I'm not going to buy any more games. I didn't buy basically any games for 2020, and I've almost not bought any games for 2021. I made the odd exception here and there because, who doesn't need a cheat day? But most of the stuff has been, I've been supplementing my backlog with Game Pass stuff and just the releases on that, and that service being front and center of all of their marketing strategy. Because like we're talking about like where is Xbox in terms of its first party launch, first party catalog. They, like you said, they were criticized. They were quite rightly criticized. They were sort of caught with their pants down. They didn't have things ready. Things were getting delayed or cancelled, or a lot of stuff just didn't pan out for them. And they were coming off the back of a console that wasn't as successful as their, they were losing like 3-1 in terms of sales. It's, the Xbox One still did well in the end, but it was definitely on the back foot. So they had a lot to prove. And it's unfortunately because of the way things have gone with COVID and development and all kinds of stuff happening around the world with supply chain issues, is that the stuff that we probably should have been seeing in 2019, 2020 have all been pushed into 2021. And it's been a very good year for that, but it's only been a good year for that because it's been condensed down and pushed and delayed, and now it's just kind of all lined up by sort of happy coincidence. So I'm not going to let them off the hook and say that they've had a great year and they've done everything right. I mean, obviously they've strategized and moved in a way that's made sense with what they've had, but they've also had, it's also been on the back of having quite a few rough years. Having said that, you're 100% right with the games as a service thing. It's clearly a big model for them going forward with a lot of their games. I mean, it's for a lot of games for even outside of Microsoft, but I think that having that stuff being part of Game Pass and like at this point, Game Pass is the Microsoft product, and first party games are essentially just a feather in the cap to get people interested. And so at this point, it doesn't really matter how many first parties they put out. Like, it's great that we're going to have a new Halo, right? That'll get people interested. But the goal really is to get people onto Game Pass, because it's like, yeah, no, absolutely. We're going to bring out Halo, one of the biggest franchises of console shooters ever made, and you can play it for free day one on the service. You don't even have to go out and get it. You don't have to do anything. You don't even have to talk to anyone. It will just show up there ready to go. And it's like, so just sign up for the service. Literally everyone else is doing it. You do it with all your other streaming media. Why not just start there?
Yeah, definitely. I think, and that's something they've admitted to, right? Like using those big ticket AAA titles from their first party to, I suppose, attract everyone to the Game Pass service, and then you stick around for the rest, right? Like exactly. It's all those franchises that you might not have experienced before. It's like, oh, Yakuza, I've never tried that. Let me dabble in that one and see if I enjoy it. Or those indie games that you mentioned as well. I would definitely just to touch on what you mentioned about the rightful criticism. Again, like they didn't have any major first party games at the launch of a new console. That is unheard of. And they didn't have anything major for the first 6 months this year. Thankfully, they had some great games drop into Game Pass to sort of, keep us satiated. But you're right, it is coming at the tail end of this year, which I think, looking ahead, like this next 8 weeks, it's like, oh my God, Age of Empires, Forza, Halo, I've got no time, almost. We've been starving up until this point, and now we're just gorging on all these games. So here's hoping they can get the cadence of those releases better established from 2022 onwards. It's looking like the first half of 2022 might be a bit dry as well. We have non-first party games coming, like Stalker into Game Pass day one, and hopefully a couple of indie titles in the early new year as well. And then, to your point, Cam, we'll see Redfall in the middle of the year and Starfield in November. I myself, I'm feeling very positive about it all. Like again, just like having waited 6 years for a mainline Halo game since 5, it's like to have one finally around the corner, and to have played the tech preview particularly and have like such a positive experience there, like, and just the campaign overview we saw as well, like it's got me really, really excited. I think it's only upwards from here. Like I think they've lined up all their chess pieces, and they're ready to dominate from this point forward. It's just going to be a matter of delivering on each title, and I'm sure they're going to whiff on some. That's just the way development goes. But I think there's more reason than ever to be hopeful for Microsoft first party than there ever has been. So that's really exciting. But anyway, we'll move on to the next story number 2, and maybe something to be hopeful for. I'm not sure. We got Ubisoft's recent latest quarterly earnings call, and 2 interesting news bits to come out of it regarding Assassin's Creed Infinity, which is Assassin's Creed going like games as a service, which we've just been discussing. Yves Guillemot, the CEO, confirming that it won't be free to play, and also that Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the latest iteration in the franchise, is now at the moment the second largest profit-generating game in Ubisoft's entire history. I'd have to assume that Rainbow Six Siege would be number 1. Again, I probably not going to to be quite honest, like I mentioned on your show, I worked for Ubisoft for almost 6 years. I didn't hear anything about Assassin's Creed Infinity, so I've got no insider knowledge here. But I think I'll step back and won't comment much on this one. But I'm keen to get your guys' take. Like we've just on games and service as in general. I think for at least for me, and maybe this is my history working on Siege coming into play. I don't necessarily like cringe at the idea of games as a service. I've just seen games release, in sometimes good, decent states, and they've just gone on to become something amazing. Like on your show, we just got done talking about my positive experience with Deep Rock Galactic and how that game just continues to improve. Siege is that way for me. Like Final Fantasy 14 is that for millions of people. Same with Sea of Thieves, which you just mentioned. So I don't necessarily think I understand the concern I think AC fans have for this iteration, but I'm keen to get your guys' perspective first on Assassin's Creed going games as service, but then in general games as service in general. Cam, I'll go to you first.
I don't know how to break out the Assassin's Creed news is going as a service. I mean, to me, it doesn't really matter on like what franchise it is, depending as long as it does well. And I mean, like you were saying, Sea of Thieves. I mean, Grounded has 1.0 update. 4 months ago now. Jeez, time's flying this year. And like I think we've reached a stage where games can release in that like early preview and just be built up stronger. Like there's so many examples of it in the industry now, and like I feel like it's still too much of a taboo issue. Because you can have the bare bones release that just doesn't have like that's what Sea of Thieves was to me originally.
Yeah.
I jumped in, I got a few achievements, and I'm like, I just feel like this is like I have to LARP in a pirate world to try and get any kind of experience for it. Whereas in like I've gone back to the update they did with Disney, adding Pirates of the Caribbean in it, and it's like this is amazing.
Yeah.
It's like I'm so glad that they managed to pull something like that off, but I think most players are not going to see we need to build a foundation before we can start laying down we need to lay down the bricks before we can put on the roof.
I think, there's been like enough instances where that's happened, right? Where a game lands and it's not necessarily fantastic at launch, and developers almost use that as not an excuse, but maybe some people would see this as taking advantage of the consumer in the sense that they get your money up front and then they deliver the experience that should have been there at launch a year or two later. We saw that with Destiny, Division as well. That's a criticism that was leveled at it. Plenty of those types of games that have come and gone sometimes, or maybe sometimes developers sort of pull up their bootstraps and say, okay, we're actually going to commit to this. And I think Rare's done a great job with Sea of Thieves in that instance. But you're right. Like it was bare bones at launch, and that's the type of game that I would argue should have launched in early access, and then maybe a year later could have been released as 1.0. And because a year after launch, Sea of Thieves was in a pretty great state. So I understand the concern for games as a service, Matt. But I want to get your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, because it's basically it's a few different things, right? Like it's the No Man's Sky effect, right? Where a game comes out, it's hyped, people are excited about it, and it comes out missing a lot of stuff that people were expecting, rightly or wrongly. I mean, again, at the end of the day, what the consumer expects is actually more important than what's actually put in front of them, because they're the ones paying the money for it. And so there's been enough. It started off as like No Man's Sky was almost like a kind of false
advertising.
I don't want to go that hard on it, right? It was a game that came out incomplete in a lot of people's minds, but it wasn't cynical as far as I could tell. It felt like it came from a very genuine place, especially hearing more about the development cycle and how they've changed it over the years. It was like, hey, we had this thing, we did this thing, we brought it out, and suddenly people were expecting more, so now we're going to make more. And like that's one thing, and like I'm still not a huge fan of how that happened, but I'm glad it got to the right place. I take issue when something comes out that is clearly meant to be early access. Like, I mean, that's the thing. It's like Sea of Thieves. There is no way you could go, well, Rare's making this. It's a big development studio. It's being funded by Microsoft. They're going to put the game out there. And even if it's incomplete, it's not going to be, oh, this is the game we imagined. We're like, no, this needs to go out. Like, this needs to be out there. And it's like cynical and cash grabby. And the thing is, like, Sea of Thieves wasn't free to play, right? That's the thing. It's like you had to pay to get into it. It was bare bones as hell. and they've improved, and it was games with a service, and they've improved it over time. Like, it was a perfect storm of like kind of like bad things in a lot of ways. Like you said, it's gotten to a really good place, but this has happened so often, and so I'm so cynical about it that I hear games as a service and I automatically think, okay, game's probably not going to be in a great state when it comes out. It's probably going to go free to play very quickly once they realize that the only way they're going to be able to make the game better is to have a paying audience, which also means that it's going to have to be rotten with free to play microtransactions to be able to pay for the stuff that they didn't get to do in the first place. So it becomes a cyclical issue of basically, and Ubisoft is rotten for this in terms of putting microtransactions into paid games already. I mean, like you said, I mean, it's not like Valhalla itself is a free to play game either, right? Like they're generating money from a game that you've already paid for. And like games as a service is kind of a thing where it's like, okay, well, we want to add additional content and we want to do more and more and more, and it's understandable. But the other side of it is, I only have like, even if I had infinite money, I only have so much time. And the thing with games as a service is you either put in a lot of money or you put in a lot of time, or in some cases you put in a lot of both. And I find that, like, I mean, you're a big fan of Rainbow Six Vegas Siege, right?
Yep.
Siege, rather. But like that's a commitment, right? Like that's there's a lot to that game. Can you imagine taking the commitment you put to that and then times that by 5 across different publishers, all trying to get their slice of the games as a service pie, being like, well, no, you need to spend your 20 hours a week with our game and our microtransactions and our engagement, so we can continue to market to you. And it's like even if I had money to give you, I don't have that time. I have time for one games as a service, maybe 2. Like I'll play Destiny maybe, and then maybe I'll dip into like I've got an MMO, like I play Neverwinter as my MMO, right? And I dip into that every time they put out new content. But I don't have time to play it like religiously. I'm not, like my guild hates me because I never show up for anything. But it's like I couldn't imagine myself being like, this is how I want to play games, because like there's so much else out there. I almost get nostalgic when a game comes out on Game Pass and it's like, no, this is just the complete game. It's like we put out the Artful Escape. It's a 3-hour rock opera that you just basically walk from right to left, have a great narrative experience, and see some of the coolest visuals you've ever seen in your entire life. And when it's done, we're just done. Like we just sign off and we're like, no, we don't sequel bait you. We don't try to get you with a deluxe pack with some cosmetics or anything. Like it. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going off my soapbox, but
I was gonna say, going back to the Ubisoft thing, I totally just remembered then Far Cry 6 this week. Players that were falling off the campaign and not finishing it were actually getting emails to say,
yeah,
the dictatorship's still running. Like you need to
get back to the game. Yeah, which is like kind of like it's just funny, right? Like it's the kind of remarketing I do for my work, right? Is that kind of stuff, is sending out emails to customers who aren't doing what we want them to do. But
yeah, when I was at Ubisoft, I would like approve, like, yeah, as a brand manager, you approve any marketing or communication goes out, so you see like the email templates that come through, and just like you make sure everything's right, like the classification, rating, that sort of thing. So yeah, like that's not new. That's something I've been doing in their games for a long time. But I think it was just the nature of this one with Anton Castillo sort of berating you into trying to come back to it. That was quite interesting.
It's a good theme. It's a really good theme. But it's like, that's kind of how I feel about games as a service. I understand their place in the industry, but I feel like it's not sustainable because there are only a limited amount of people with a limited amount of time, and people are going to pick favorites. And you're going to have ones that are like Siege, which started off as like it was still a paid game. It was, they kind of like, well, we want to do like a Counter-Strike style, squad v squad game that has a lot of destruction and interesting stuff. And then it just exploded. But they didn't start that way. It exploded because people liked it to start with, and then they expanded on it. Yeah. It didn't start in a place of being incomplete or predatory or anything like that.
Yeah. No, I think honestly, I think the industry is now big enough that it can sustain. It's clearly sustaining multiple of these games, and I think we see publishers trying to just bite off their own little section of the pie. But I think someone like Phil Spencer, would agree with this. Like the pie is just growing, that there's enough to go around. Like there are massive games as a service games that I know nothing about, but there are millions of people who play it each month, like Warframe, Never played it, but there are millions of people enjoying that game, and that's the only game they play. Roblox. 100 million people playing this game that I've never even seen gameplay of.
There's even like full game studios building their games in Roblox that are doing like wildly well.
Yeah. Ark Survival Evolved's another one, like Rust. Like you can name off like 24 massive gas titles that are just absolutely killing it.
I guess the thing is that like the only thing about that is for those 10 that we talk about, right? There's 50 that they've tried that have just crashed and burned, because the problem with games as a service is if they're not supported, the revenue cycle doesn't spin up and they die.
Yeah.
And so they have to get that initial influx of people. So whether Assassin's Creed is going to do that, I imagine it will, because Ubisoft games sell very well and they're very, very popular and they're huge. And like I think this is probably a good fit for Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed. But so I'm less worried about that. But it'd be interesting to see what form it takes.
Yeah. I was going to say Bleeding Edge would be a perfect example of one in recent history.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Just a game that just didn't get an audience, and so it died off. Hyperscape from Ubisoft as well.
I was just about to say, the battle royale genre is very similar in that regard, and before that was the MOBA genre, right? Everyone wanted to get in on the new hotness.
Yeah, and
eventually it could only have a certain amount of people, or you have to have a critical mass of people, especially if it's going to be a multiplayer game.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway, we'll wrap up topic number 2 and move on to number 3. It is regarding PlayStation's latest state of play that happened the other night. I can't remember, or the other morning for us, pardon me. I can't remember exactly what day it happened. It's copying a lot of criticism online for just not needing to happen. A lot of sentiment saying this could have been an email. 20 minutes long, all third-party and independent games, which is never necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, a lot of people came away thinking, did this need to happen? So I want to have the discussion just, in general, not just on this PlayStation State of Play, but what we've seen during the pandemic, complete shift from physical events now to these digital showcases, some very lengthy, like Xbox's Game Showcase, sometimes running 90 minutes, or State of Plays that run, 20 minutes. Directs, I think there have been some Nintendo Directs that have been even shorter. What, I suppose, in a perfect world, in your perfect world, how would all of these game companies communicate their games through these showcases? Do we want to see fewer of them but bigger, more substantial showcases? Do we want to see them scattered throughout the year so we're getting something small more frequently? Matt, I'll go to you first on this one.
I'm of two minds about it, which I know is a cop-out answer, because I like most people who are big into the games industry, right? E3 was the mecca, right? It was the event, it was the thing. It was like, okay, cool, we're all going to watch this on a live stream. We're all going to, we all used to be able to go, apparently, back in the before times, but it was essentially just a trade show, right? And a lot of that stuff could have been in an email, and essentially now is. It's trailers being shown. I mean, it used to be you had developers come out and talk about their game, show their behind the scenes stuff, do interviews and stuff on stage. But eventually we got to the stage where Phil Spencer comes out and he goes, "Here are the games," and then he walks off, and then there's just like 10 trailers, and then a developer walks out and says, "I love working on this game," and then there's another trailer, and another guy comes out and says, "I worked on this game," and then there's another trailer, and then there's a sizzle reel at the end, right? Like. You could just send me the playlist on YouTube and I can just watch that. Like, I don't need that anymore. So with that in mind, it probably makes sense to make smaller shows when you have things to talk about, because first of all, like, that works in terms of delivery. It's because it gives you bite-sized stuff. You don't miss things. It allows certain games and certain events get more spotlights on them when there are quieter periods in the news cycle. And also, it's less, it's better for the developers in terms of, like, building demos and that sort of stuff. It's like, well, you have to hit the E3 date. You have to, it's like, okay, stop developing the game. We need you to develop a vertical slice of this game that you've been working on with all these elements in it that aren't quite done yet, and make sure that it does not break on stage. And it's like, or we just put together a vertical slice of the game when we have time from the stuff we've already done. And when it's done, we say, "Hey, Microsoft, we've got this trailer for you ready next time you want to do an event." And they say, "Oh, we've got one coming up in October, so we'll just put it in there." Like, I think that's definitely the way to go about it. The funny thing, though, is that, like, now it's gotten to the stage where every time ones get announced, they have to say what's not showing up. They're like, "Okay, Xbox was it Xbox 2020 Vision. No first party news. No this, no this, no this. It's like no shirt, no shoes, no service. Like it's like they just want to let you know they're like, do not get your hopes up. We are not talking about anything interesting. Because people just, people are like, oh, new news. This must be like E3 level announcement. So like I understand the kind of like trepidation around like, what do you do when you don't have anything to talk about? It's like, well, just don't run the event. And I think that's kind of what Sony should have done, right? Or at least if you don't have a tent pole for the event, or if you don't have a good reason for event, you might as well just send out a press release. The journalists will do your job for you.
At the very least, you need to manage expectations. Like,
Exactly.
I think this would have been fine if they had gone through and did like the Microsoft had the Summer of Indie. That's what it was called.
Right.
Like if they'd gone through and basically said like this is going to be an all indie event, just showing some of the titles that are coming. You're managing expectations. It's not as bad then. If people are coming in expecting all the new news on Spider-Man, God of War, all that, they're going to be disappointed.
I think you both really nailed it there, and that's expectations needing to be managed, and they really tried here, and I kind of feel for them, but I think if there's any particular I think it's very easy for expectations to for fan expectations to run wild based on the language that you use, and they were very particular. They said this is a third party 20-minute state of play, no first party here. So what does the PlayStation fan base do in that instance? Okay, what are the biggest third-party games that we could possibly hope to show up? They're looking for Final Fantasy 16. They're looking for Pragmata from Capcom. Maybe Hogwarts Legacy could rock up here because it was a PlayStation showcase last year. So I don't blame them, like, because that all falls under the definition of third-party. And so when that stuff doesn't happen, it's a huge disappointment. And I think the really sad effect of that is that these indie games and other third-party games that are just trying to get their name out there are almost blamed or criticized because they've taken place of titles that the fan base were expecting or really really hoping for. Like, but I totally see your point as well, Matt. Just around I think, did this really need to happen? And I'm kind of two minds. Like, these games just could have dropped their trailers on the PlayStation YouTube channel with a couple of blog posts, and that would have been a completely sensible way to do it. But would it have got the 200,000 concurrent viewers that the YouTube stream got? Like, all of a sudden, we are talking about the update to Bugsnax. We are talking about that weird music game that was second just on the screen earlier. We Are OFK, which in my mind looks really interesting. Like, I'm now thankful that I know about this game. But yeah, like, is that okay at the expense of all of this negative criticism that PlayStation has copped this past week for this state of play? I'm not sure. Like, I think on one hand they're criticized for not showing enough indie games, and then they go and do it, and they're criticized because none of it really here was that exciting for a lot of people. So I honestly don't know what the answer is. I just think they need to do a better job of defining what is a state of play. Because every now and then we'll get like an individual game version like the Horizon Forbidden West one in May, where that's really exciting, right? 20 minutes, Horizon Forbidden West, first gameplay showcase. Okay, I'm really excited. Whereas this is also 20 minutes long, and everyone's coming away calling it a failure. So Cam, I feel like I was interrupted you there. Did you anything you want to add?
I was say two things. They're getting Death's Door, one of the biggest indies of the
Fantastic,
year.
yeah.
Like to me, that's a win. And Death First looks pretty good as well. But then I'm kind of in like two minds about it. Like whether, I guess it's that old argument, is any kind of marketing bad marketing?
Yeah, publicity. Yeah, exactly. Like,
any publicity is good publicity, right?
Sorry.
Yeah. Like it's controversy, right? And it's like the only problem is that, like, have you burned your bridges? Are people going to be like, well, next time I'm just gonna I'll wait for the Reddit thread to come out that summarizes the whole thing, and I'm just not going to watch it. Because that's kind of what's happened with a lot of the Nintendo Directs, right? They came out and said, oh, hey, we're going to show only this, and it's going to be this amount of time.
We're just going to show Chris Pratt voicing Mario.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like we're gonna show the big Animal Crossing update, and that's it. And they're very upfront about it.
Yeah.
And they drop them seemingly at random, and it's just like, hey, we've got some news. This is the way we share it. And it's like, okay, that's great. Because like they don't do E3, they don't do anything else. Like they might do a slightly longer version of it for E3 because people are interested. But like I think they've nailed that messaging and managing those expectations for the most part. Whereas I think Sony still has some work to do, and Microsoft especially does, because they haven't really settled on a way of delivering a lot of that stuff.
Well, last year when they did the month to month, that was
they were trying to do that month to month thing, and they was like, well, the one in August is now in October.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like Inside Xbox as well, their monthly show criticized for just sometimes the content was really interesting. I think a lot of the time it was just the production value or the script and the cringiness, which was a bit much for some people. I'm of the mind, like if it doesn't warrant the event, then yeah, I think you risk really turning off the community, because there are people waking up at early hours of the morning to watch this sort of stuff. They get really excited, and they just come, a lot of time come away disappointed. So I think in my mind, I would love it if there were just again, just to make it easier for content creators like us, just two or three big events a year, and we know that we're likely to get a couple of really exciting announcements out of them. And yeah, maybe like I don't mind the individual state of plays, right? It's like, okay, we're going really deep and hardcore in on this title. I'm going to show you all the new features and the mechanics and that sort of thing. If it warrants that, like a big new first party release, then I think that's really exciting. So anyway, I'm not sure there's any one answer for this sort of thing. It just they just got to take it as they come. Anyway, yeah, well,
I was gonna say they had the perfect excuse with COVID to basically say, oh, we're not doing any like, we're just going to take a step back from that and not do any of these press event things. And it's like, just stick with it. Just don't do them.
Before we wrap up the top three, I did want to squeeze in one little really positive and heartwarming news story around the Australian games industry, and that is Queensland joins New South Wales now in offering a state-level tax rebate for game developers. I've just posted the link to the Kotaku article in chat. Obviously, we have the 30% digital tax offset coming midway through 2022 from a federal level, and New South Wales recently expanded their digital tax offset as well to include video game developers, and that's at 10%. Now Queensland's offering 15%. I just think it's really wholesome and just really positive for the local game development community as well.
Didn't Victoria get one a few months back as well?
I think they got one, or they've had one. Like I think Screen
there's
Victoria's,
one upcoming, something like that.
Yeah, Screen Victoria's always done a much better job than most state governments or state bodies, I should say, in supporting video game industry. So it just continues to get better and better for Aussie devs, which I think is just really awesome. Anyway, we'll move on now to question time, the big portion of the show where we dive into one big theme. And I'm really excited to chat about achievements with you guys. Obviously, this is your whole thing. Like, this is 1.8 million gamer score, Matt. Firstly,
somebody's whole thing.
How like every now I'll tune into the show and you guys like just this past episode talk about 7,000, 9,000 gamer score this week. I'm like, how do you have the time? That's my first question.
Okay, so I've been achievement hunting since I got my first achievement the 7th of the 7th of the 7th. It was a Gears of War, and like I spent my entire first paycheck on a 360. I used to work at EB Games, which helped. That was kind of one of my summer jobs, so I was there a lot. I knew a lot of the people in the industry, at least in the like retail part of that. I'm massively antisocial, and for those watching on Twitch, I'm very, very pale. I do not go outside very often. I work, and now especially like it's been many years, so my life situation has changed quite a bit. But the idea of achievement hunting has always been a big part of my life, even before I was on the podcast. I usually find the time where you find the time. Like, I don't have any kids. I do have my lovely fiance with me, and she's supports me and just letting me waste my time however I want. I lose a lot of sleep usually. I'm actually usually pretty good about that, to be honest. It's the leisure time. It's like all of it is gaming, because my gaming time comes from the 20 minutes that most people stare at a phone for a little bit before they get up in the morning, right? It's that kind of stuff where it's like you find those moments and you're like, actually, when you start adding up this time, where you're like, okay, well, I don't commute anymore. I might game on my lunch break or something, or like I have lunch, or like I don't really, I'm in lockdown at the moment, so I'm not going anywhere on the weekends, right? and I do a podcast about this stuff. So I have a driving impetus to keep this up because I need to be able to provide content for the show. I find the time. I always find the time. And it's not usually an issue. I've kind of got a relatively good balance. I don't know if it's a healthy balance, but it's a balance that works for the situation that I'm in.
Nice. Just go Spartan in the chat says thinks is that they're at a 6,000 gamer score. Just keep climbing.
Yes.
First step towards 1.8 million. Disco. Just keep that in mind. Cam, what about you? Are you ever on the Hall of Gamers podcast thinking to yourself, why do we do this? This is 2 hours I could be spending grinding for achievements.
Honestly, I love the podcast, and ever since meeting Matt, it's like my whole gaming history is all about social. Like the friendships I've made out of it, people I've met. Like some people I still think about, like in gaming sessions like 7-8 years ago, that I haven't seen log on online, which is always sad, but you don't know what's happened to them in their real life. But yeah, like gaming to me has always been a massive thing ever since I was a kid. I use achievements more so as a guide. Like I don't really worry about full completions and that unless I absolutely adore the game. To me, a good achievement list should be enhancing the game and not detracting from it. If it becomes a to-do list, that could be such a negative on the game, and it may, like, I know especially in the achievement hunting community, like we will actively talk to each other and just like, nah, avoid this game. It doesn't have guides, or it's ridiculously complex, or for whatever reason. It might be like a mundane, it might be serious. But then there'll be absolute, like, other games, like good example is Wolfenstein: The New Order, where it's like you're doing the main campaign, you're experiencing all the weapons, you're doing a few difficulties, and that's a perfect list to me.
You get a few collectibles and you're good.
Get a few collectibles. Like, to me, it, like, you don't want to be doing like 5 playthroughs of the same thing on different difficulties and collecting 250 mugs and 100 pencils and all, like, it doesn't need to be complex, but you want to give the players that experience of like just satisfying everything, like doing everything that was meant to be done in the game. Saying it at the same time, like I'm not a completionist. I have 1 in every 3 games complete. I did the Game Pass Hall of Fame challenge, and quite honestly, tanked my completion percentage from like I think 60. It's around 60% to like 30%, just so I could win an Xbox, which is worth it. But in Matt's mind, I'm just absolutely crazy. I've committed sin. I'm going to hell.
Yeah, because for comparison's sake, I sit at 95.4% completion. Across essentially out of every achievement I could earn, I have about 2,000 or so that I haven't got.
Yeah, just to clarify, that's not something you can see on an Xbox console level, right?
No. And that's
this is something you're tracking manually.
So this is kind of an interesting thing about achievement hunting, is that it's because we talk about it being a niche of a niche, right? It's got a small community, but it's a very dedicated, nerdy as hell community. So there's websites like True Achievements, which is the key one, which is essentially a stats, and it's kind of a social media platform. It's a lot of things where you can essentially attach your gamer tag on there. It will scan your gamer tag for all the games you played. It'll scrape all the data. It has an API to Microsoft.
I was going to ask if that was the case. Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, it started as a scraper. I now believe they have a direct connection because they have a good working relationship with Microsoft and Xbox. They pull through all the game information, all the achievements you've earned, and then they pull through your gamer score, and then they also do a weighted score as well, which is very interesting. So games on the Xbox platform usually have 1,000 points per game. But it's some games you can finish in half an hour and get 1,000 points. Some of them take 200 hours, right? There's no real, but it's the same points, essentially. It doesn't really matter what you do. True Achievements tries to make things a bit more evenly weighted by essentially saying, okay, you get the base level, but we put a ratio on the achievement. So say 100 people have played this game and 10 of them have earned this achievement. We will essentially increase the points that achievement is worth by the ratio of people who have got it versus the people who could earn it.
Right.
And it's done by, like, if you pop one achievement in a game, it's on your list, essentially. So there's always one achievement that's like 100% because literally everyone gets it. And then it just kind of goes down from there. And so more difficult achievements are usually worth more. I mean, it is still based on the base value of the achievement, and there's some debate about that, but that's kind of getting into the minutia. But all of that is automated, right? It scans your gamer tag every few hours or so, and will pull through new things. And it has a friend feed. It'll show up your friends on who's earned what achievement, what games they've completed. It also tells you about gaming sessions. So a lot of achievements are multiplayer based, which is a big bugbear of mine, because like I said, I don't play well with others. It's not really like multiplayer is not really why I play video games outside of co-op experiences, obviously. So if a game has an achievement, it's like, hey, you need to get 1,000 kills in the multiplayer mode. And it's like, well, I don't really want to play the multiplayer mode. I could play it. Or at worst, it's like, oh, it's a multiplayer mode for a game that no one's played in like 5 years. So I set up a session on True Achievements, and I say, hey, I need to get these achievements. Who is available at this time to help out? We get into a lobby together, and we all help each other get the achievements by basically cheesing the system to make it as easy as possible.
Right.
I know that sounds like madness, because it kind of is, but it's essentially the most efficient way. And that's kind of what achievement hunting is, gaming to an extreme level of efficiency that's almost neurotic. At least in the way
you're min-maxing your own time to get the most points. Yeah.
Exactly, right. And it's and it factors in so many things. Like, it has the Skinner box thing. It has the achievements have the dopamine thing where it's like, well, you're ticking things off the list, and that feels good. And it's like, and you get the reward from you get the sound, you get a graphic, it gets on your tag. People can compare. There's a very competitive element to it, and it's a meta game, right? Because essentially it evolved from high scores, right? Like, you go into an arcade, you see Arse has high score because that's usually the person at the top. And it's like, okay, well, I have the high score in this game, or I've done everything in this game. And the only way was like, well, I used to take a picture of it and show it on social media to like my 3 friends. Or it gets added to my tag for the rest of my life, and anyone can see it forever. And it's always on display, and you can have a look at a record of every single game I've ever played over over my 20 years or whatever. For better or worse.
It's good too, like having that historical data, like knowing a game from 5 years ago, whether you're rated out of 5, what your thoughts were back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And like True Achievements is really good for that, because it has a lot of stats work. Like, it'll measure your milestones of like how often you hit like a milestone of like gamer score and True Achievements, and also like number of achievements earned. And then you can set goals. So for example, Mephisto, who's the one who challenged me, he challenged me on True Achievements. So he put up a goal that showed up on my feed that essentially said, hey, I am going to beat Neomaster's gamer score by October 31st. Good luck, buddy. You got one more day. But yeah, so like it's a real competitive element, and they've kind of built a community for each other. But like Cameron said, people hunt for achievements for different reasons and in different ways, in the same way that people play video games for different reasons in different ways. So it's really like it's an interesting microcosm of gaming in general.
Break down achievement hunting in like so many different regards. Like, you can have your achievement hunting completionists. You can have people like me that will, if they love the game, they'll fully complete the list. Or in some of my regards for like Age of Empires, Forza, Halo, like I'll do the series completions for them, because I want every single achievement in that series just to say like, look at me, I've done everything in Yakuza, and it's a 200-hour plus completion.
Yeah, and then you've got people who do like streaks, so they make sure they earn an achievement every single day to maintain their streak. So one of our guests we had on a couple of weeks ago, he's got a streak of he's got years long, like years of Amazing. Like he earns an achievement every single day. And he sets it up to make sure that he has it. Obviously he's gamed at it a little bit. Like, he doesn't just organically earn them. He's not just that good. He's like, okay, well, I know there's an achievement here, there's one here, so I'll play up to here and then do this bit tomorrow or whatever. Yeah. But it's like, it's a mindset. It's a way that people play games. And like, so Charlotte, one of our moderator, basically she is getting into achievement streaks, and I'm not really big into it, but like I kind of earned I think it was like 150 day one or something, just kind of by accident, just because I was playing a lot of trash and really quick games, and eventually I dropped off. But now she is like, I'm going to beat that. I'm absolutely like that. This is why I'm going to play the game. This is how I'm going to play it, and I'm going to plan around it. And this is what I'm going to get more out of this game than the developers even intended.
161 days, she says in chat.
Thank
Bravo.
you.
there's a lot there I want to discuss, because my next question is around how could the achievement system that currently exists on console and obviously on PC now and eventually the cloud, it could be improved. I can only assume that a lot of the functionality that you guys already experience every day as part of the True Achievements platform and community, you would love to see carry over, because I maintain that I really think, like, at least on a base level, trophies from PlayStation side seem to have become like the de jour thing, right? Like they have rarity, bronze, silver, gold. There, it is clearly denoted when you complete all the trophies on PlayStation with a platinum. That's not something we really have on the Xbox side of thing, where you get a thing to say, I have this many X to show how many games I've completed the achievements for. So at a very, very simple level, I want just like a green tick for how many games, like on the game logo itself in my library, saying, you know how like the Game Pass logo bottom right or whatever, just like a green tick, just like the Twitter verification logo, just top right of each tile to show how many I've completed, and then that is a form of social currency, if you will, that's displayed on your Xbox Live Gamer tag that you can show off. But that's just me, very not an achievement hunter whatsoever, saying I think this would be neat. But I'm keen to hear, like, from you guys as hardcore achievement hunters, like what would you love to see? How would you like to see this this system evolve? Cam, I'll go to you first.
I've got multiple answers for this one.
Hit me.
First one, I would say, is basically just taking the trophy from Sony's side. Basically just having that 100% actually equivalent to like a platinum trophy, because a lot of people say it is the case on Xbox sides, and it doesn't actually equate in terms of, people say a platinum trophy equals a certain obtain all other achievement on Xbox sides, and they're not the same. They're coded differently. But it's a comment that's constantly thrown around in our community where it doesn't actually work in terms of the coding. So I would love to see an actual like platinum version of a trophy instead of the 100% completion. But to further extend on that, when a game gets new DLC or a title update, just having that down into a breakdown menu. So you might have, like, a good example, might be a game with like one DLC and one title update, having that full completion up the top and whatever the base game is called, having the platinum trophy for that. But might even having like a DLC or / title update trophy. So having two different versions of that same trophy or that subsection under.
Yeah, that's fair, right? So if you decide to start a game and it has 1,500, gamer score, okay, what are the 500 gamer score achievements that I know that I don't necessarily have to chase if I want to get that platinum equivalent? Yeah.
On TA, we'll also have two sections of people that track with DLC and people that don't track with DLC. Matt, which ones are the right ones?
The correct ones are the ones who track with DLC. So essentially, so my completion percentage is based on, so like the 95.4 is based on every achievement I could earn in every game I've started, including DLC that's been added. So sometimes I'll look at my list and be like, oh, I've lost a completion or two because someone's added a game, or like a game has got a new title update, or they've added like 500 achievement points or whatever. So
is that a headache for you? Do you see that and like, damn it?
Yes and no. I mean, it's a little bit. It's because the thing is that like I don't want to get too in the weeds of like, like it does border on an addiction or an obsession, right? Like and like obviously, you want to be healthy about it. You want to make sure that you have a life outside of this kind of stuff. And like, it's debatable. You talk to 10 different achievement hunters. They have a different definition of what too far is, right? But yeah, like I would be lying if I say it doesn't bother me, right? Like it's 100% a thing. Like it's got to the stage. And also the other problem is we talk about like unobtainables, games that have achievements that are coded incorrectly, so they never unlock. for some reason. Like they're broken, which so essentially that makes their game incomplete, like non-completable at all.
Yeah, I thought maybe you were talking about those ones where it's like you have to beat a developer in a multiplayer match or something.
Well, so then you have like the second type, which is discontinueds, which is like get achievements that used to be possible, but because of some reason, like multiplayer servers going down or the developers not playing anymore, they're just literally impossible to get anymore. You could get them, but you can't get them anymore. So those two things are kind of like the bane of my existence, because those two things will stop me from ever completing a game. And I've got like maybe 10 or 20, maybe like 15 games on my tag, and I could probably name them all because of how much they stuck in my brain, because they're like, I literally can never finish those. I will never have 100% complete tag because of this stuff.
Yeah.
And like, that's just kind of something you just have to get over with. And it's like, it's not actually, at the end of the day, it's not that important. Yeah. And I played a lot of amazing titles. And at the end of the day, I play video games because I want to play video games. And this is the mechanism that gets me to play more of them. But if if they disappeared tomorrow, I probably still would keep playing games. I would just play them differently, right? For
sure.
See, we talk to developers too, like in terms of the unobtainables and discontinued, and we tell them, like, if you're a game developer that has like 5 games that have unobtainables, it's very, very common in the achievement hunting community. Just like, we're just going to blacklist. We're not going to support you.
Yeah. It's just not worth the hassle for those people. So it definitely bothers me. In terms of improvements, so like we definitely would, and there's a thing called the Achievement Hunting Initiative, which is kind of helping developers who are less versed in achievements or have issues with achievements and that kind of stuff to help them fix those issues. Like when there's
resources and tools and so many different things.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on with that because it's very important to the people, including myself. In terms of improvements, I agree with like, hey, yeah, having them split out would be nice. Having a check mark or something to show that you've 100% completed a game would be great. A lot of the features in TA would be nice. Like I like the trophy case feature. So I have a bit of a thing where every 100,000, I make sure I get to 999 or whatever, 1,000 points away from hitting that 100,000 milestone. And then I pick a 1,000 point game that I know is not going to get a title update. Like it's just a standalone game that is usually very strange or bad. And I complete that game 100%. And that puts me at exactly the 100,000. And then I put that game in my trophy case.
Right. Okay.
And so I would love.
So you just have an obscure collection of these weird games in your trophy case.
Yeah. So I mean, I got through. Like I've got like Destroy All Humans 3 was my first one. I've got like Hannah Montana was my second one. I usually try and pick something weird or funny. Like I think I did. Was it the last one I did for my 1.8 was the Unicorn Princess, which was an absolute shocker. And then for like my 1.7, I did like a driving essentials training game where it's like teaching you how to again, I just find weird and obscure stuff because I think it's funny, right?
Yeah.
But it's kind of a thing. Like it'd be really cool to have like one of the things, and this is kind of like what Cameron was talking about with series completions. Like it would be really nice to be able to put a trophy case on your profile to say, hey, I've done this. Like you can go through my profile and look through all the games I've done, but here's what I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
I would like just going further into that, and it's probably not going to apply for like 90% of the population, probably like not even 99%, but just every 100,000 having what was that one achievement that you hit 100, like might not be hitting on the spot, but got over 100,000 in the vicinity. What was that achievement, and what was that game?
Yeah,
and then just going all the way up to 1 mil, just so you can, if you do hit 1 mil, which seems to be the magical number in the achievement hunting community, just to say, like, this is my list. Because, like, a topic we love to bring up on the show is, what is the achievement that you're hitting 1 mil with?
Right.
Like, one of our old co-hosts of the RGS podcast purposely did it to piss off another host of the RGS podcast by hitting 1,000,001. And what achievement was that? It was...
Oh, I can't even remember. I think
it was something in a Vici Inventor, I think.
Yeah, see, Vici Inventor or something, and he got like a 1,001 achievement. So he just won over the exact number because one of our other friends,
took a photo of it, sent it to him.
Yeah,
wasn't that painful at the start of the 360 era with like those 3 gamer score achievements or 8 gamer score achievements? I remember, I think Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter or Tony Hawk's Wasteland was like. Even then, I was like, it wasn't really, achievements weren't established. But even then, I was like, you've just thrown it off. It's like it's either 0 or 5. Just
exactly.
Yeah.
It's funny when you go back, like Raw is one of those things where early in achievement hunting or early in achievements they weren't really sure what to do with them, right?
Yeah.
So they were just like,
yeah.
well, we're
no
gonna
one
try
knew
a
what
few
they're doing.
things.
Yeah, brand new.
Yeah.
No one ever done it.
So Grow put out the worst achievements possible and said, okay, for this achievement, you need to be #1 on the world ranking leaderboard. I'm never going to get that achievement. It was the second game I played on my tag because I didn't know much about achievements either. But now it's stuck there and I will never, ever finish that game. So that's something that will just, eat me up inside. I could earn the achievement. I know the people to talk to, but I know it will require me purchasing a goddamn server farm of 360s and like spending 6 months playing nothing but that.
Yeah.
And even I draw the line at somewhere, right?
Just to give an indication of that too, there was one guy that like just posted on Twitter the other day that follows us, and I'm just like, no, like we have to give this guy respect because there's only 92 people that have finished this game in the world, and this game's been out since 2006.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Nice.
And that doesn't even get into people like the achievement hunting community are also a bunch of dicks. I will tell you right now. like again,
it's the egos we spoke about, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly right. Like I mean, like I put it on a little bit, but there are some people who are like really like
look at me.
Look at me. I mean, and it's peacocking is part of it, right? Like it's part of it, and like it's an extension of that. But you get a lot of elitism, but you also get a lot of underhanded stuff. So there are achievements that like those leaderboard ones where the guy will get #1 and then he will sit there and he will do everything in his power to make sure no one ever gets to that #1 spot.
Right.
And you know who you are if you're listening. Because he also did the same thing with Kane and Lynch and he's an arsehole. But
oh wow, there's a game I haven't thought about in a long time.
Yeah, right. That had another one of those achievements. 2 of them actually. So yeah, so like, again, having that stuff like that's become less of an issue going forward as people have learned how to use achievements and how they work well. And the cool thing about achievements is they provide a lot of data on how people play video games, right? Like they tell you how many people start the tutorial and don't finish like the next level. They tell you how many people start up a game and don't, like they never go look at the credits, or they don't do this, or they make this. It's like, oh hey, you've got a moral choice. How many people do what? It's like, well, you can clearly see. It's like 80% of people do the good choice. So it provides a lot of interesting data.
And like we've talked about before, like a proper list will affect your sales. Maybe not in the regard that you're thinking, but at least on the Xbox platform.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like if you nail it, there are, I'm gonna say, tens of thousands of people in the Xbox community who will jump on your game specifically for it. So I think it's something worth focusing on as a developer.
I should say too that there is limits. Like we could talk about publishers like Zidalon who are doing the base 1,000 and then every 6 months after 1,000 title update, 1,000 title update, all the way up to 5,000, which you would compare to something like Halo MCC or Gears of War 5 as being incredible long grindy games. But these are 1 hour completions.
Right. Yeah, they've essentially clued in that people are interested in this thing, and that the numbers go up. Numbers go burr. People are interested, right?
Yeah.
But they've kind of turned it on its head.
Right.
But
which is why we talked so much about like TA value being such a more respectable figure than actually just your gamer score.
Yeah, because you can essentially steroid your way up to easily 600,000 with the right list. But yeah, like you said, like there's I'm looking at the True Achievements community. There's 650,000 people in that community.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Sure, they're not all like crazy hardcore achievement hunters, but to be part of that community, like you got to have at least some interest in them.
Yeah, definitely. All right, I'm gonna get like one more improvement that you want to see for achievements, just really quickly. In my mind, I would love to see, if we do get the eventual platinum equivalent, just some kind of novel cosmetic thing. Like right now, every achievement comes with a unique piece of concept art, usually, that you can use as your Xbox dashboard. Sometimes they're really boring. I kind of wish there was a bit more effort put into those as well. Yep. But maybe in mind, a cool dynamic theme for your game that could be a background as well. I would love to see that. But yeah, one more thing you'd like to see improve for
I'm going to go really left field. The ability to report an achievement.
Okay. Whoa. Yeah.
So if something is like
Camp serious, this is his one wish.
you might be going in day one and you're really excited. You're done. There's 10 achievements on it. You got 9 of them, but the last one's broken. Like I got one world first this year in what was it? Never Yield. Aerial Knights Never Yield. I love it, and it was just knowing that you're the first in the world to complete a game is such a good feeling at the same time. imagine that being robbed from you because a developer's broken an achievement. So basically, report it. Enough reports come in. Xbox has a policy where, like, if you have this kind of repeat behavior, they will kick your games off the store. They will give you they'll give you a certain amount of time to fix it, come out with a patch. Otherwise, it's like, sorry, we're not going to support you anymore.
Yeah.
It is a requirement to release the game on the platform. And then, yeah, for me, it would be just, I'd like, they have tracking in some achievements. So it's like, as you go through it, it'll increase by percentage to tell you that you've actually done the right thing to get towards that achievement. I'd like that to be in every achievement. Like, some games support it, some games don't. I know it would be
really?
I know it'd be like a technical hassle because it's like third-party developers were like, oh, I'm not going to bother doing that. Right?
I think I've looked into the coding for it too. I think it's the difference between the 2013 achievements and the 2017.
Right, yeah. So it's like,
yeah.
But
yeah, because now that I mention it, I don't think it, like, in my Hades run, it wasn't happening. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking about different.
So that's like, some of them do, some of them don't.
Yeah,
it's just kind of a grab bag. It's like usually first party stuff is pretty good about it because like Microsoft want to push that. But it's like, oh, you're 50% of the way to this achievement. And it's like sometimes it's just like, oh no, you're at 0% and then you're at 100 once you unlock.
Actually, I think that the Hades achievements weren't registering. Like, you had to do a thing where like the quick resume was causing issues. Because I remember it was like Pat Cerberus 15 times, and I wasn't seeing it going up. I'm like, am I doing it right? So yeah, I think that was just one particular issue.
10th in the world for that game.
Wow.
I did not sleep very much that week. It was an amazing game though.
Oh, one of my favorites. I think it'll probably end up top 5 all time for me. A bloody marvelous game. Boys, I reckon I could speak to you for many more hours about achievements and just pick your brains on how they can be improved, but we're going to have to wrap it up there. I know it's getting late for you, Matt. I don't want to keep you much longer, so we're going to call it. Before we go, though, I'd love for you to tell the audience where they can check you out online and also how they can tune into Hall of Gamers podcast.
All right, Cameron, you got the shelling ready?
All right, sweet. So you can catch us on Twitch on, depending on what week, it's going to be a Friday night our time or a Saturday morning our time. So either a Friday morning, I post times up. Just go and follow us on twitch.tv/HallOfGamers. HallOfGamersPod. Yeah, sorry. HallOfGamersPod. Go and follow us at Hall of Gamers Pod on Twitter. And then just support me and Matt's on our handles, which are NeoMaster 2005 on Twitter.
Yep, NeoMaster 2005 on Twitter, NeoMaster just on its own everywhere else. Discord, Xbox, True Achievements. Shadow
Sage, or one word, on Twitter. Shadow Sage _ on Twitch. Stream nightly, or at least most nights. And then just Xbox TA, just Shadowless Space Age.
Beautiful. Awesome. Your handles are on screen for Twitter, and if you're watching the VOD on YouTube, then all those links will be in the description as well. We're going to wrap up the show. Like I said at the very top, this is the question box. We are here on twitch.tv/magic_cast every Friday, 8:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. Catch all the VODs on YouTube. Just search Magic Casts, one word, on YouTube, and you can follow me, Magic_cast, on Twitter as well. Boys, I want to thank you so much for joining me. I had a blast on your show. So everyone go check out Hall of Gamers podcast as well. And thanks, guys. And we will see you all next time.